It's December 25th, 2017. Merry Christmas, if you're Christmas kind of people. And now it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them down. Number 1, Republicans pass the reckless, destructive tax reform bill of their dreams. Last week, Republicans in the House of Representatives and the Senate gave their shitheel president and themselves an early Christmas gift. Both houses of Congress passed and Trump signed the tax bill, which bestows the vast majority of its benefits on the wealthiest Americans and will add an estimated $1 trillion to the federal deficit, which Republicans plan to pay for by slashing spending on Medicare and Medicaid and other public assistance programs many of the poorest Americans depend on to survive. Pretty much everyone other than the small percentage of the population that stands to directly benefit from it thinks this tax plan is a horrible mistake. But anyone who's been paying attention to American politics knew that most Republican politicians would step over the corpses of a dozen poor people to pick up a quarter off the sidewalk already. What this tax bill reminds us of, just in case we forgot, is that Republicans in Congress are also shamelessly corrupt. Bob Corker, Republican senator from Tennessee, changed his vote on the tax bill from no to yes after a provision was added that introduced a 20% deduction for income from real estate LLCs, a deduction from which Corker and several other members of Congress and Donald Trump would directly benefit. Corker initially stated that he opposed the bill because of how much it would add to the deficit. The final version of the bill does nothing whatsoever to address that concern, but Corker changed his mind and voted for it anyway. It's a mystery. Here's something a bit more straightforward. Number 2, Roy Moore is a sore loser. And an asshole. Moore lost to Democrat Doug Jones in the special election to fill Alabama's vacant U.S. Senate seat. The result was decisive, close, but not close enough to warrant a recount. Nevertheless, Moore has refused to concede until military and provisional ballots have been counted. The Friday following the election, Moore sent out an email to supporters soliciting donations for an election integrity fund that would be used to investigate possible voter fraud. He's also taken to social media to share an article from right-wing fringe site WorldNet Daily crediting Jones's victory to, quote, Muslims and Marxists. I don't think that's true, but if it is, thanks Muslims. Thanks Marxists. Moore also shared an article about Doug Jones's son, who happens to be gay. Now, why would the conservative religious zealot who ordered Alabama courts not to recognize the Supreme Court ruling legalizing same-sex marriage and wants to criminalize homosexuality want to show his rabidly homophobic supporters an article about the gay child of the man who defeated him? It's just another head-scratcher, I guess. Number 3, Sessions rescinds protections for marginalized communities. Attorney General and vengeful Goblin King Jeff Sessions announced that he was rolling back over 24 Justice Department guidelines, most of which originated during the Obama administration and were aimed at protecting juveniles, people living on low incomes, people with disabilities, and members of other disadvantaged groups. The guidelines being rescinded include a letter asking courts to review their policies regarding charging fees to defendants, which can often leave individuals accused of minor offenses trapped in debt. Sessions also rescinded guidelines clarifying protections for legal immigrants and documents addressing questions related to the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. They realized that the name the Justice Department wasn't meant sarcastically, right? I mean, do they? Number 4, United Nations calls Trump ambassadors bluff. Last week, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, threatened that the U.S. would be, quote, taking names of countries that voted to condemn Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In response, the UN voted overwhelmingly to condemn Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The vote was 128 to 9, with 35 abstentions. Haley also threatened that if the vote didn't go her way, the United States might reconsider its funding of the UN in the future, which is exactly the sort of well-considered, measured response you would expect the self-proclaimed leader of the free world to have when most of the rest of the world asks it not to do something incredibly foolish. And now it's time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and/or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. He held a photo op where he promised to roll back federal regulations to the level they were at in 1960, which was before the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the EPA, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, OSHA, the good old days. He tweeted a de facto endorsement of Ron DeSantis, the Tea Party-approved candidate in the Republican primary for governor of Florida, after promising not to get involved in that race. He gave a speech in St. Charles, Missouri, where he bragged about his imaginary victory in the imaginary war on Christmas, referred to the journalists who were there covering his speech as fake news, boasted about his non-existent accomplishments as president, talked shit about Puerto Rico because why not, right? And claimed that he understands working people because those are the people he grew up with. Just a reminder, Trump's father was a millionaire real estate developer. If there were working people around when Trump was coming of age, they weren't his father's peers. They were the help. And Trump convened a cabinet meeting where Vice President Mike Pence spent a solid 3 minutes lavishing praise upon Trump while Trump sat across the table nodding approvingly the entire time. The sort of thing that happens in healthy, vibrant, functioning democracies that aren't, in fact, crumbling plutocracies all the time. That's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, look after each other. Hey folks, hope you found this one worth watching. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron for as little as $1 a month, but if you pledge at a level of $5 a month or higher, you earn yourself a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5, just like these good folks who have become $5 plus level patrons since the last time. Richard Olivo, thank you Richard, and Andrew Wiley. Thank you Andrew. Thanks to all of you who are my patrons at whatever level you are pledging. Thanks to all of you, whether you're patrons or not, for watching and liking and sharing and for all of the support you give me, and I'll see you next time.